Okay, let's make this little cutie. Little upholstered chair. I made him mid-century modern just because toothpicks work well for that. But I'll show you how you can just put like straight legs on this, and you can do a few other things to make it more traditional if you want to. You'll need your fabric. Now, make sure that test it. If you were to get tacky glue or whatever glue you want to use, if you get it on the surface, make sure that you could use a Q-tip and some water to remove that without it bleeding, without, too much trouble, okay? Because unless you're some kind of marvelous individual who doesn't get glue where it shouldn't be when making miniatures, well, it's going to happen. Make sure you have enough fabric. This is it's more than I need, but you might mess up. So there's that. You need a needle and thread, same color or as close as possible. I'm actually forced to use a strand of embroidery thread because I did not have something close enough. And even this doesn't quite match, but close enough, okay? Thin needle, if at all possible. Here's your Mr. Clean sponge. So this is the foam that goes in your little chair, and these are like 2 for $1.25, and obviously I've cut off of here and so forth, so it's smaller than it would normally be, but this is preferable to a different kind of sponge because the holes are very, very small. It's nice and firm, and it is so easy to cut with a kitchen knife. So that's the thing. Couple of toothpicks. You've got get yourself some pretty thick or sturdy pasteboard. I think they call it that. You're going to need maybe a piece of paper, a little bit of cardstock here, and then whatever glue you want, your exacto knife and scissors and so forth. So online, I am going to post a Google image of these patterns. However, with the dimensions, you see that I made some mistakes. I will fix that online because this is not the right dimension. But you can pause now and you can see what your dimensions are going to be. You're going to be cutting 2 things out of the foam, the seat cushion in the back. They're both going to be a 1/2 centimeter, 5 millimeters. And then this gives you your dimensions. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started on this. So I would suggest going ahead and just cutting your pasteboard first, just going ahead then and you're doing the bottom and the 2 arms. It's just an easy enough place to start. Now we can cover our pasteboard. Let's do the arms first because those are going to need to dry. And you can do the bottom easily while those are drying. So here's what's going to happen. In another video, I've shown how if your fabric is really uneven, or if it's not blocked well, as in the weave is wonky in some way, then pull at the thread on the edge of the fabric. And mine's pretty straight, it looks like. And I want to just pull these, and if I can get a good one started, then, okay, see. If I pull these on across, doing the inside one closest to the inside. There we go. Then see, it wasn't perfectly straight. For what we're about to do, it doesn't actually matter if this is completely straight, but I'm just showing you so that you can be aware of, say you have a pattern on this, it's going to make sure that everything is nice for you. I'm just going to trim that off a little. No big deal. So now I have kind of a nice end. And what I'm about to do is make a little pocket for this arm to slide down into in a minute. When I make this pocket, though, I'm going to turn it inside out. And when I do that, I'm going to create a nice even seam here. It's going to be nice The top is going to be all clear and clean, and it doesn't matter how the bottom is. Okay, it'll be raw. That doesn't matter. So in order to do this, I need to give myself a nice seam allowance on this. If you're going to sew this, which you certainly could, I'd give myself a lot of seam allowance around this so that the jaws don't pull that under into your sewing machine. I would do that. So what I want to do here, and I can do this, measure this if I so desire. This will disappear. This pen will disappear. This is something that is dark enough, but is, you know, somehow you can get off of the fabric would be best. You know, pencil might work, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw just along here. But I want to show you something. Mine's about dry. I want this line to either be very thick, or I want to move this over a little, because this part is going to be glued. Then I'm going to cut this off, and this part will be glued. When I go to slide this in, I need a little bit of room. So I don't want that to be just right up against it, at least on one side. Okay, so I'm just going to mark this, and then all I'm going to do is I need some seam allowance here. So I just want to do this on the outside. And remember, you've got to have that seam allowance. And it just doesn't matter if this is exact or not, but as straight as possible. And just give that a little bit of a cut. It's not the best. Finish this off here. Okay. A little trim. Deal with that later, if it's even needed. Okay, so I've got this ready to go for one. I'm going to check this. Okay, to save time later, I can just go ahead and go to the inside of this. And if this doesn't dry out, I can just draw it up. Give myself a line, like so. So let's do this like so. You could also just measure this over. Okay, I don't want to trim anything yet. I know this is a lot of fabric, but just bear with me. This now, I don't have a right and a wrong side to my fabric, okay? So it doesn't matter. I mean, my ink went through a little bit. It doesn't really matter to me. Now, here's what you want to do. You are going to be putting glue. Let me do something else first here. Let's not put glue all the way around the edge yet. Give myself some seam allowance, and then I'm just going to cut this off. There we go. It's fine. It's going to go like so. All right. So I want to try to keep this glue as close to that edge, but not over it as possible. I'm going to use this is my glue brush, my paintbrush that I don't care what happens to it. And go all the way along, creating as straight of a line as you can. Do that on both sides. Alrighty, so I got that as straight as possible. Let's take this and sandwich it. Push this over. It's not really sandwiched yet. Okay. And I need to let that dry. I'm going to do this again for the other arm. Same thing. While those are drying, what I can do is the bottom. And ink left me already. No worries. For the bottom, oh, this is the selvage edge. That's nice. Anyway. For the bottom, all I'm going to do is, let's not use that end. I'll clean this up. And all I'm going to do is actually just sandwich this. Okay. And I'm going to glue this on with a little bit of seam allowance there. I want to get as close to the edge here, but this isn't going to be fancy at all. This is not going to be a pocket. All I'm doing is putting one layer on here, and then I will trim any excess off of there on the sides because that's not going to show. So these aren't quite dry yet, but I want to go ahead, and you do want to be patient and make sure that that's nice and dry. So I did adhere this. I did need to use a thinner glue because it really was coming through a lot more than I wanted to try to use a Q-tip to remove. So I trimmed nice and even to the best of my ability on that, and I have a nice clean front. Okay, so we're gonna set that aside, and what I'm gonna do is show you how to deal with this. So mine's a little bit uneven and whatnot, but I wanna take it, put it on its side. Okay, I'm gonna cut the narrow side. So I'm gonna need my kitchen knife. You don't hear that often. Don't really have kitchen knives here. So I'm measuring in 0.5. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'm going to measure 0.5. Pencil works, as you can tell. 0.5. Air on the thicker side. Okay. On the top, but I also want to do this on the side or bottom or whatever you want to call this. What will become the side. I want to do that. Now this could take a few tries for you. It's not that big of a deal though. You're going to have plenty. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to line this up, giving myself a little space for that knife. Okay, now this part, right, the top is not a big deal to get straight because you have the ruler. But as you go down, you want this to be a 1/2 centimeter all the way around. So I'm having us do this so that we can kind of watch and see if our knife is staying straight. Okay, so as I cut, I'm going to be aware of whether or not my knife is, and it might take more than once. Like I said, this just will cut it very easily. It took me a few tries to get the hang of this. Let's see how we did. Oh, not too bad. This side is nice. I did not cut completely straight, But what the deal is here is you're actually going to have a lot more than you need. I mean, you know, think about this, you know, your seat cushion in your back, you're not going to need a lot. Now, you can go ahead and try to even that out, you know, it's, that kind of depends on how, like this knife isn't going to really, this is an old knife, it's not going to really let me do that. And you don't want to rip it all up. So I have enough that is at 0.5 that I can use it. All right, so then what you can do is you can either just measure over, or I do have the measurements here, and you can use that as a little pattern if you want to, but we're just going to cut our seat cushion, and then we're going to cut the back. And the back, I'm going to fix this as I said earlier, but this is really the size of the back. So that's what I'm going to do now. It works beautifully with an exacto knife, no problems. Just be careful, if you squish this down too much, you don't actually get a nice clean edge as you would think you would. It'll be a little bit off, but I mean, don't worry about that. You have a lot of sponge. You can make adjustments, and you're going to put fabric over this. So small errors in your cutting are not a big deal. They're just, it won't show, I promise. Let's do the upholstery, the actual upholstery. So I tried to cut a nice end. You know, I pulled the threads and did that thing. What I'm going to do is I want to cut wide enough that these will partially meet. So I'm going to give myself a little extra. I'm just going to go on up. It's easier. Okay. So this is the straight edge. Scooch it over. Now I want to stop there for a sec. So what I'm doing, I need to tell you, this is the front, or that doesn't matter. The wider part, okay. I am going to be gluing the sides first in it so I can get a fold that looks nice and even in the front. Okay, so I need to stop and tell you that. So I just need enough. I don't have to overlap this. It's okay if I do, but I do want it to meet or close enough come to all the way over. Now I have a reason for that I'll explain later. So make sure you've got enough fabric to do that. I'm going to trim this just to get this out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put my glue just on the foam and glue one side. I don't want it anywhere but on this top. Try to glue it straight across. And this is where, of course, you have to hold it, wait for things to dry. We spend a lot of time doing that, though, don't we? I ate into this seam allowance, but I don't think it's going to matter. No. Okay. And then bring this across. It doesn't matter if you double that. It just doesn't, you know, you can go ahead and double it over like that. Just be careful, because when you cut, like I didn't get a very good cut on this. If you're going to double your fabric, just make sure that it's on a side that is maybe not cut as nicely, maybe it's cut too small. not deep enough, I mean. So I'll hold that. Keeping my gluey fingers out of here. Check my green. Okay, so when that's completely dry, I can show you though how to do this. I want I want one of these sides really nice. So if you want to practice with the back, that's fine. It's not going to show. I want to pull this across here. Adjust. Okay, so after making all my adjustments, I don't know, I'll make this the front. So essentially, with upholstery, the problem with miniatures is it's always like, oh, how do I get a nice edge? You know, I can't do what full-scale people, well, and honestly, it's a problem for them as well. You know, it's just so small. So what I'm going to do is I want a nice edge like that. So if you look here, it's a nice edge. I don't know if I held that the right way. There we go. So I've got a lot of bulk here though. Lot of bulk with the fabric. So I can remove some of the bulk carefully. Don't go too far. Don't cut out too far. And I can just trim. I think I made a mistake here. Let me see. Wow. Yeah, well, that'll be the back. Okay, I was just telling you, don't make this mistake. That's gonna have to be the back. I trimmed too much. And I don't want to actually redo it. See what I did? I cut in there. Poo. And it's already glued. Well, I could hide it, but I'm just going to make this the back. So I wanted to remove some bulk so that I can then glue. I still need to remove a little bulk. Much more carefully this time. And I don't want to glue the front of the sponge. I just want to glue the fabric in. So I can start here. I am going to go like that eventually. So however you want to do this, you can glue it together a little bit up in here and then fold this over, especially if you made a cut there, like I did. So eventually you're going to make sure you don't have glue on your hands all over the place. You're going to tuck this. And you're going to glue that all nice, get that all nice and clean across the front. And you'll need more glue. You'll need to glue the fabric to itself. And you just tuck that in so that you have a nice edge. And for this bottom, it's nice to take out some more of this bulk by trimming it a little bit here. But it's not as big of a deal as when we do the back. The back really requires that you cut a lot of the bulk out. But you can do that. Boy, this is really going to be the back. Okay. Anyway, I will do the same thing in the front, but without the mistake, without that. That would be nice. And it'll be all nice and covered on the edge. If you wanted to, say you were running out of fabric, you could make the back just a raw edge. But since, you know, you might need the practice, like obviously I must have. Okay, all right, enough of that. I will finish the back of that off camera. So this is a slightly more complicated situation. I still want quite a bit of seam allowance. So I can take this, you know, draw a little bit like that so that I can cut. Give yourself, just check. You're going to give yourself more than you're actually going to need. So this is fine for me. Just going to trim. Perfection isn't necessary because you can trim later. All right. So I want to pay attention to some things here. I want to get this, if I need to pull some threads to make sure that's straight, oh, that just did it. I want that to happen. Okay. So we're going to glue the top. Okay, we're going to cut little slits here, and we're basically, that's what we're going to do, is we're going to do that. Now, to make things easier, I can always, you know, glue this part first and then do this so that I can keep the upholstery nice. Now, because I did not cut this very well, I'm going to slide a little slice underneath here. I think I've got a little piece that's really thin, and I'm actually going to kind of slide a piece in there. But not on the front, so I'm probably going to do that in a minute. Something like that, because I really did a very poor job, and I'm running out of my sponge because I've been doing a lot of trial and error. So I will do this, but I want you don't, hopefully you don't have to do that. Or hopefully you have enough sponge left, you can just adjust it. So I'm going to do that. It's not going to be perfect, but I want when we do our upholstery, I want it to look nice here. When we do our little fake buttons. So, long story short, I'm going to need to glue that down. You hopefully will not. And I'm going to glue this puppy on here. Alrighty. And then just enough. I'm going to turn this up and I'm going to glue it like that. Oops. Now, I'm probably going to have to sit and hold this longer than you will because I glued the sponge first. So I'm going to go ahead and stop the camera and just hold this for however long. Okay, so that's glued down. When you go to glue the top here, go ahead and find kind of the middle. Don't get anything on the edge if you can help it. Scooch this down. Make sure you're all nice and no wrinkles. Scooch it. And then you're going to hold that down because that's going to help you when you go to make this rounded. So we're going to hold that down. In the meantime, I'll show you that I did create a nice end for the front. The bottom, these I cleaned up a little bit. I glued the bottom part together. I used a Q-tip and a little bit of water, and it takes the wrinkles right out of there. So those are all ready to go. All right, now I need to have this curved. In order to do that, I need to carefully make my clips. So I'm going to go and I'm going to clip this fabric carefully this time. And I'm going to do that so that it takes away some of the bulk, and I'm going to be able to get a rounded edge. Okay, so that's my goal, is to get a nice rounded edge. Now I need more clipping and I need to remove more bulk. So carefully, I can do maybe every other one, whatever I find that I need. I don't really want that type of thing where I have, where it shows. I just don't want extra fabric. I don't want the tucks to show. I want this to be all nice and smooth. So as I go around, I am just going to keep trimming and tucking this and making little cuts. Careful not to get that on the side, until when I'm finished gluing all of this down, taking out bulk. But eventually what'll happen, I need more bulk taken out. I don't want that. Eventually what'll happen is I'll get to the end, and then I'm going, when that's all done, and then I will go ahead and I will fold in the sides. Okay, all the gluing's ready to go. Covered that. That was good. And then went ahead and finished this off. Tried to trim a little bit of the bulk out. I could still do a little bit more, but I'm going to show you something that won't really make a difference. So what you want to do is cut a little bit of fabric, and just enough that you're not overlapping your seam allowance. Now, if, you know, you could have just had more seam allowance maybe, but the more seam allowance you have, and then you need to cut and try to have a nice edge, the harder it would be. So you can put a little bit of glue to hold this in here. And then I'm going to do the other one first. Now, the reason for this little slice is that when you go to do what would be the little buttons, you need something for your needle and thread to dig into without tearing the sponge. So we're going to let that dry, and then we're going to look at this. So I kind of eyeballed. I only did 2 little stitches, and then I got to thinking, well, maybe I really should have done 4. So however many stitches you want, you can mark them, eyeball them. You could try to measure over, but this is, I really doubt that this is a perfect square. So what I did is I looked for the good side, and then I just sort of eyeballed it. So I'm going to go ahead and put 4. Kind of look at it. Not too bad. These could come in. And these could go out a little. So, okay. Now, needle and thread. You just need 1. You don't need 2 strands. And when you do this, okay, I want to show you. Let's see here. Get this as close as possible to that dot. Okay. So you pull this through. Now, if you are going to stitch horizontally, then make sure you stitch horizontally on all of your stitches for continuity. So what I want to do is I want to put my needle down relatively close to my stitch, maybe a millimeter away, and I'm going to stitch horizontally. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this through, and I'm going to, don't yank this really, really hard, but I'm on the back. Go ahead, and first, before I knot, I want to pull this to where I have like a nice little button. And then I can just knot that off and then move along, repeating on that. Then I will do the same thing on the back. I will, however you want to do this, you know, you can eyeball it. Maybe you want it farther apart. Maybe you want 6. I don't know. Maybe you just want to do 2. So that's how you do that. You mark that and you're going to pull that through. Now you'll see I had us do that little piece because it then, now that you see how that goes, it won't rip that sponge. But I don't want it overlapping any more than possible. So I'm going to make my stitches. So our little buttons are sewn in. And now it's time for that cardstock. What I'm going to do is I'm going to glue a piece of fabric down to this. I can do that now and then cut. And what I'm creating here is a cover for the back. Because see, this back is not very nice looking. Now, if your back isn't going to show, then of course you don't need to do this. But if you're going to make several of these, maybe you want to put them around a dining room table, then some of them are going to show. And so all I'm going to do here is just bring it in enough to cover up all of the mess on the back. As I put that piece of cardstock on the back, I cleaned up some of the glue with a Q-tip and some water, but it looks like I could do some more. My cardstock was white and the fabric was red, so I needed to touch up the edges a little bit, but it gives it a little cleaner look in the back. I can trim that a little bit more even, and I can fluff this back up as well. All right, so it's time to put this puppy together. So I'm going to go ahead and put glue on, this is the bottom, and I'm going to not take this quite out to the front. I can go in the back. I don't want that to show. I'm just going to pull this glue this way. I can always clean it up, but preferably I want to find the side that was good. It's this side. And I'm going to push this slightly, ever so slightly forward, not by a lot, but I want the cushion from the top, see, There's slight extra back there. That's okay. I don't want the bottom to stick out more than the cushion. That's just not how it works. So I want to push my cushion forward just a little, like that. I want it even though. Get this even. And looks like about like that. So it'll look like that. See, I just make sure that that curtain, I'm sorry, the cushion will go out a little more. I just don't want that base. Okay, so, all right, that's cool. The next thing that you can do is the back. Now, the back goes all the way down. So now the back is on. You want to go ahead and put your arms on. Find the best side. You put anything that you don't think looks good underneath, because this part is what will show. Chances are that side isn't going to show. So what we're going to do when we glue this, see, we want this arm to have a nice seam right here. Okay, nice seam right there. And then you'll pull the back up a little bit and squish this in as you glue. So I'm just going to pay attention to when I glue this here. I'm going to make sure I do that, and then I'll pull this up. It'll need to be kind of pulled up and adjusted. Okay, and you say you don't care for the mid-century modern style, then what you do is you take either a square toothpick, right, and you adhere that, okay, or take the middle of a round toothpick and use that. So now, honestly, I think the square one would look better because it's just a little bit more angular. Okay, there's not that, this has a round back, so, you know, that's up to you. But at any rate, no matter what you choose, you are going to want to sand, and then, especially if you're staining, and then you want to measure it at approximately 1.1. 1.1 gives you approximately an 11-inch leg. So you've got yourself a little armchair. Change the legs, make it fit into whatever decor you would like. The second one looks like it worked out a little bit better than the prototype. That's always good, folks. It's always good. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. And if you like the content, please subscribe. Bye-bye.